Hi everyone, I have been getting requests to talk about Nomis and what I thought of it because I saw it yesterday, 1 year after learning that it was coming out. Better late than never, right? I did see the movie. I watched it on Blu-ray in the comfort of my own home because it did not get released in any cinemas near me. I'm not even sure it got a release for my country. I'm gonna say that it's a very confusing movie. I'm gonna try and keep it as spoiler free as possible. Well, it's no secret, at least the trailer makes it no secret, that it's going to be one of those procedural forensic murder, serial killer, FBI specially trained agents, homicide detective kind of movie. I've seen people referring to it like a longer episode of Criminal Minds. And yeah, I would not say that it's very far a lot from what it was, or I would not say that it's a bad description. It's a bit inaccurate, but we'll get to it later. There was a great sense of awkwardness in the movie, especially because of the topic that it deals with, which is pedophiles. Usually movies deal with these things like, yeah, we have a pedophile, we're catching him, everyone is happy, the law enforcement people go home to their families, they pat their child on the head and they're like, oh, the world is safe again. But what happens is that pedophiles have incredibly wide networks in the deep web, and if one gets caught, they're like a hydra. Like, two start going after kids in his place. This is always how it is, because people are horrible, and a lot of people in positions of power and authority have very, very dark consciences, and they have things going on that you're horrified to find out. And usually it only gets out, like, people are still horrified and can't believe that Joseph Fritzl got away with what he got away with, but he did it for years and nobody noticed anything, because we don't actually suspect people who are husbands and fathers and who pose as very wholesome individuals. Yeah, as you can see, you're getting to watch my cat being lazy because I've had a cold and I look absolutely terrible and nobody needs to see that. I don't want to be held liable for turning people into stone. But let's not make a big deal out of it. And to address the elephant in the room, of course I watched the movie because of Henry Cavill, and I was talking to a friend who was saying, well, it seems as though this movie had a lot of bigger names than Henry who were attached to it, and they couldn't care less if it was a good movie or a bad one because they cashed their check, they got their bag, and everyone's happy. Everyone goes home a bit richer. I'm a bit concerned because while Henry was definitely not the biggest actor in the movie, he's the person whose shoulders the movie rests on, and if it fails, he's the one who's going to be roasted online. And I have to say, I've gone to Rotten Tomatoes and I've seen how savage the people are in regards to this movie, and to some extent justifiably so, because the story is choppy and not very well thought out, the editing is not there for the most part, and a lot of things are very hard to follow, very hard to understand. I'm a very easy moviegoer to please. I don't demand very, very deep story. I don't want tiny details from a movie to be on my mind 2 months after I saw the movie. I don't expect that kind of immersion from every movie I go to. Some movies are just there for entertainment, for escape, for occupying 2 hours on your Saturday afternoon, or I don't know, for running in the background as you meet up with friends and chat. Um, yeah, so yeah, I'm all for nice, superficial, frivolous movies, but I at least expect nice action scenes, some witty dialogue, some nice banter, and a tiny bit of something that I can cling to and get attached to the characters. For instance, in this movie, the main character, Marshall, is shown as a dad who is divorced and who has trouble connecting with his daughter, who is a teenager and is only entering the world of online chatting with boys and receiving dick pics and all that shit. And understandably, he's very protective of that. But it's not shown enough, and it's shown in a way that um, ruins the suspension of disbelief, because he, on one side, he's shown as somebody who is very insightful and emotionally literate, and on the other hand, he's almost incapable of establishing communication with his daughter, which is, how can you be so good at your job? How can you relate to so many strangers, but you can't relate to your own child? Um, but I guess it's that way in real life as well, because with one's own child, the stakes are higher, and you tend to become more insecure and not think that you know exactly what they meant, and the way his character was built was kind of incoherent, because like I said, he seemed to be very competent at work and very lost in family situations. And I would have loved to see more of the family situations, and I would have loved to see more of that normal part of Marshall that we don't usually get shown in movies like this. And I was kind of grateful. I saw that as a small blessing that the main act of the movie did not consist of him having to save his own ex-wife and daughter from the psychopath. Because usually movies like that and series, even Criminal Minds sometimes, is guilty or are guilty of raising the stakes and making the stakes personal for the law enforcement person, in order for them to summon up all the resources and their capabilities in order to catch the evil motherfucker. But I was happy that this movie didn't go there. It did go there with another character who was in the business of punishing bad people because of something that happened to him. And I thought the ending, the twist at the end, was incredibly formulaic and overdone. And I think we moved on from that, like, about the time when Edgar Allan Poe was writing. So, yeah. Also, the cursing in the movie was very unsatisfying. I grew up in the 90s, in a period of time where actors like Mel Gibson and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren used to curse liberally in movies. And cursing was very juicy, and it had its role. It had an active role in entertainment. But now it felt as though the cursing was just shoved in there for an artificial purpose of showing how hardcore and how realistic the situation is. And by trying to do that, they managed to make it seem, on the contrary, very, very unrealistic. because of um, because of how forced and how shoehorned in the cursing seemed. I read other reviews of the movie, and the word constipated gets passed around a lot. Oh god. Sorry, I haven't healed from the cold completely. Yeah, I wouldn't say constipated. I would invite some nuance into that and say that Henry, he just seems very done with everyone, because from the beginning of the movie it becomes clear that he is the only person who has some common sense among the other characters. I mean, everybody works in law enforcement, everybody works for the police, and he seems the only person with a bit of sense of reality and how things work. Because there's a guy who works in the IT department of the homicide division, and he brings his baby to work. And is there something bad is going to happen, and it's going to involve the baby? And, well, guess what? It did. That was very low-hanging fruit, because, yeah, people care about babies, and in the end, it wasn't what you expected to be, and everything was good again. I didn't quite like that trope that usually sours up all or most of the movies of this genre, where the people in law enforcement are shown to be very capable, very well trained, as having a lot of resources. You see them being able to summon SWAT teams within seconds at any location they need them to go to. And yet, two guys with a teddy bear are able to outsmart and to decimate an entire homicide division of people who have dealt with other motherfuckers like that before. And it doesn't help with the suspension of disbelief, because, yes, in real life, sometimes you overlook things. You're very tired, you're exhausted, you've looked at a case for too long and you can't see the details anymore. But in movies, this is a very, very lazy trope. I realize that they do it because they need to advance the plot, and they need to make it seem as though the killers and the psychopaths are always like 3 steps ahead of the police and law enforcement, but sometimes they could switch it up. There are a lot of stupid deaths in the movie, and I couldn't get over that. But at any rate, it wasn't as bad as I was warned it would be. I was afraid it would be another Snowman, like that horrible movie with Michael Fassbender. It wasn't like that. It wasn't the best movie I've seen lately, but like I said, I'm afraid that Henry is going to catch all the fallout for the movie not rising to expectations. Sorry, I didn't think it was a great payoff for waiting for it for like over a year. So, yeah. Those were my thoughts. You wanted to hear them?